Chapter 19 of Her Love from Above. God's Perfect Timing. Madison grasped the cat collar with a victor's grin. She had won. She had both the box containing the family heirlooms and the collar in her possession. If her mother was right, even one of these items was worth the entire property of Haven's Rest, including the 40-plus cabins it housed. She squealed in delight as she stopped at a red light, turned left, and headed toward the next town. Life now would be so much easier. She'd not have to put up with Johnny's diesel stench when he returned from work, and neither would she have to cater to her mother's every wish to coax money from her. She would be self-sufficient. She would sell the diamonds first, then collect on Johnny's life insurance policy, and when enough time had passed that it was safe to sell the family heirlooms, she would find a buyer for those. Finally, she could mingle in the realm of upper society where she rightfully belonged, find a man who was her equal, and live as the priceless treasure she was born to be. When her phone rang again, she glanced at the screen and noticed it was the same number her mother had recently used. As soon as she heard her mother's voice, she hung up. She didn't need to listen to her ranting and raging ever again. Really, she told no one as she turned another corner. I'm gone, Mother, and I'm not coming back. Stop calling me. You ought to know by now that I'm not answering. I won. You lost. Get over it. She muted her cell phone and tossed it inside her purse. Her mother would have to find someone else to boss around. Madison passed another pawn shop without stopping, even though her impatience begged her to value the diamonds immediately. She knew it wouldn't be wise to have them appraised close to Haven's Rest, for the authorities would surely check every nearby pawn shop to see if they were sold a cat collar containing diamonds. She had to be patient. As far as anyone at Haven's Rest knew, she was so upset by her uncle allowing her abusive husband to stay that she fled the scene. When they found her, there would be no evidence she had taken anything. Her mother would be the only person who knew about the heirlooms, but if she said anything, it would identify her as the original thief, and Uncle Charlie would have her arrested. After all, Paige had no evidence she was the one who took the suitcase. She had snuck out the lodge's back door during that ridiculous meeting, so there were no witnesses. Madison switched lanes to try moving around another vehicle driving under the speed limit, which was far too slow for her. When she did, a small sports car zoomed past and moved between her Chevy and the vehicle she was trying to pass. She blew her horn at the man, but he ignored her, which angered her greatly. How dare this arrogant jerk treat her like she was a nobody? She was not a nobody, and she would never again play the role of a penniless pauper. She pounded on her horn to get his attention, but his response was to make a rude gesture with his finger. "Not this time," she stormed. "Not anymore." She shot her vehicle forward to within 3 feet of the sports car and turned her lights on bright. No one, and she didn't care how expensive his vehicle was, would treat her like scum. Not anymore. She pulled a malicious grin. One of the first items she planned to purchase was an expensive vehicle. That would identify her as someone important, and it would gain her respect, so people would think twice before swerving their cars in front of hers. When the sports car failed to move out of the way, she blared her horn again, but this time she held the rubber lump down without mercy so that her horn sounded loud, menacing, and incessant. A few seconds later, lights flashed in her rearview mirror, persuading a string of foul words to spew from her mouth. Not only had the sports car cut her off in traffic, but he was now causing her to be pulled over by law enforcement. Another string of foul words gushed forth. "Someone should wash your mouth out with soap," Lieutenant Chazakwe said as he watched the scene unfold. After Ghost and his fellow companions fled Haven's Rest, the lieutenant was to find and follow Madison. Although that assignment proved to be harder than it sounded, because she was much farther from the ministry property than should have been physically possible. Because she had a serious allergy to obeying speed limits, the lieutenant had barely arrived in time to see the sports car move in front of her vehicle. 60 seconds later, this part of his assignment would have been blown. Once again, he listened to a vibrant list of foul words spew from her mouth. "There was a reason parents used to wash mouths out with soap," he stated. "It helped prevent vocabularies like yours." Dealing with spoiled, rotten brats wasn't his favorite of assignments, even though it was often a necessity. He lowered himself inside her vehicle and waited. Her phone rang again. It was muted, so she didn't hear the ringing, but her entire purse lit up like a Christmas tree. "No, Mother," she screamed. "I don't want to talk. I don't answer to your every beckon. Never again." When she glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed the police car still following, she pounded her hand on the steering wheel. Just then, the bleep of a short siren sounded, indicating the officer was after her, and he was becoming impatient with her failure to stop. "I'm trying," she yelled while throwing her right hand upward so the officer would see her frustration. "I've got to find a place to pull over." "You'd better do as he's ordered," Lieutenant Chazakwa advised. "You don't want to be arrested with those treasures in your possession. Look to the right. You can use that huge parking area about a quarter-mile ahead. Maybe he'll take it easy on you if you give him a safer spot to work." Madison backed off the sports car's tail and made her way to the side of the road as the police vehicle followed. "Not the side of the road," Lieutenant Chazakwe suggested. "There's a perfect place right up there. He won't have to worry about passing traffic in a parking lot." Madison looked around and saw a large parking area with very few vehicles. If she was about to get a ticket for something someone else did, then she didn't want the whole world, meaning the strangers passing by, to witness it. She pulled into the parking area and eased her vehicle to a stop. Her face was burning with rage as she switched off the ignition. Paige thrust down the receiver. "She's not answering," she cried out. "Someone answered her phone the first time I called, but they're not answering now. My daughter would never do that to me. Johnny has done something to her. I know it. She's in trouble." Tears moistened her eyes as she turned to the female cop beside her. "Please try to find her. He seems so sweet when you're around him, but he's not. He's a monster. Please send someone to the hospital to question him. She could be hurt somewhere and we'd never know." The officer booking Paige regarded her with pity. "We've already put an APB out for her vehicle. Right now, that's all we can do." Paige dropped her head into her hands. "He's a monster," she repeated. "They're lying. They are all lying. Even if she did hire someone to eliminate him, I wouldn't blame her. I couldn't live in that nightmare." "I'm sorry, ma'am," the officer said. "What was that last part?" Paige straightened. "Nothing. I'm just worried about my daughter." "Look at that massive sign," Lieutenant Chazakwe suggested to Madison. Madison reached toward the glove compartment for her vehicle registration, but before she could open the latch, she noticed a bright neon light announcing her arrival at the largest pawn shop in the world. She was momentarily stunned by the size of the building, because it looked like a giant Walmart. There was a knock on her window. I'm getting it, she fussed. Just give me a second. She pushed the button on her glove compartment. The officer knocked again. Good grief, she blurted, forgetting her registration to roll down the window. But her ignition was turned off, which prevented the window from obeying her command. Nothing was going her way, so she decided to step out of the car instead. She smiled as she opened the door. Perhaps there was another way she could persuade the officer not to write her a ticket. The officer stepped back. Stay inside the vehicle, he ordered. Turn on your ignition long enough to roll down your window. This is ridiculous, she muttered, bringing her foot back inside the car. You had no reason to pull me over. Miss, okay, she snapped. She shut the door, turned on the ignition, rolled down the window, and then switched the ignition back off. Can I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance? That's what I was getting when you so rudely banged on my window, she fussed. Miss, there is no need to get brash. Just pass me your license, registration, and insurance card. No need to get brash, she sarcastically repeated while staring at the officer. Why did you stop me? That vehicle cut me off, and I'm the one you pull over. Miss, that vehicle had plenty of room to pull in front of you. On the other hand, when you nearly rammed into his bumper, turned your lights on bright, and began blaring your horn, well, that was plain stupid. You're lucky I'm not trying to pull you out of a scrunched up piece of metal right now. That's not what happened, Madison disputed. Miss, I saw the entire thing. Then we must not live on the same planet or you're blind, because that man nearly ran me off the road, she thundered. He cut me off. If you saw the entire thing, then you saw him do it. Miss, get me your driver's license, blah, blah, blah. I heard you the first time. She reached inside her purse and pulled out her pocketbook. Miss, if you don't have a quick attitude change, I'll gladly do this at the station. Madison took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. I'm sorry, officer, she said, although her voice indicated no remorse. It's been a rough day for me. Without another word, she provided her license, insurance card, and registration. Are you happy now? He just stared at her. Sorry, she said as she threw her hands up. As I've said, I've had a rough day. Without a word, he turned and walked back to his patrol car. He's got the patience of Job, Lieutenant Chazakwe joked. Now, he said, back to you, Madison. Why don't you take another look at that pawn shop? Madison fumbled with her keys as she awaited the officer's return. She was furious. He knew it wasn't her fault if he saw the entire thing, yet he was giving her the ticket that belonged to the driver in the sports car. This traffic violation was likely one too many, according to the letter she received from the insurance company last month. That's it, she suddenly decided. That guy lives in this pathetic town. He knew the driver of that car. He needed to fulfill his quota and decided to get an out-of-towner instead of someone he knew. That arrogant, another set of foul words spewed from her mouth. A soap bar would indeed have done you wonders, the lieutenant repeated. Now, Madison, how about taking a second look at that store? As Madison drummed her fingers against the steering wheel, she turned her attention back to the pawn shop. It was enormous. She'd never seen one so large, and the jewelry section, visible from the front window, was of significant size. Her eyes traveled to a sign hanging from the ceiling directly above the jewelry department that read, Registered jeweler available 24/7. She froze. You've got to be kidding me, she snickered. Registered jeweler? He can value my diamonds. Her grin grew more prominent as she decreed, Karma at its best. After all the abuse she had suffered this past week at the hands of Johnny and her uncle, as well as a police officer who didn't care who the real villain was, she'd happened into the parking lot of an enormous pawn shop where a registered jeweler was available 24/7. Sweet, she declared as she shoved a few strands of hair behind her ear. She'd ignore her earlier decision not to value the diamonds in a town this close to Haven's Rest. After all, karma had brought her here. When the police officer returned, her attitude was significantly different. He handed her the ticket to sign and then asked, "Miss Kennedy, is everything all right with you?" She squinted up at him. "Yes," she replied, "except for the fact that I got a ticket for something someone else did." "You're sure?" "Yes. Why are you asking?" "There's an all-points bulletin out on you. I guess your mother thinks something might have happened." "Oh, good grief," she fussed. "I'm fine. She's been trying to call me all evening, but after the way she's treated me this week, I won't answer. That's all. And I don't plan on answering either. Maybe never again." "Miss, perhaps you should answer just once to let her know you're okay. She is your mother." "You wrote me a ticket. Well, fine, that's your job, but you can't tell me what phone call to answer." "Okay, miss, but I am going to respond to that bulletin. It needs to be canceled. There's no use wasting police resources on a bulletin that isn't valid." "Good," Madison said. "You do that."